You're thinking that if I were to just switch jobs, switch careers, switch companies, switch teams within the company, get different coworkers, if I were to just do that, everything would be all right. But that is not true. And we prove this to ourselves over and over again. Don't trade your problems for other problems. Life is full of problems, and we avoid them because we're human beings. We don't like to deal with problems. Problems we see as a bad thing because, well, hey, if it's a problem, it's something I have to fix, and I don't want to take the time to fix them. If I were to say to you at work, give me a list of all your problems, you would write them down and you would probably be frustrated at them. You wouldn't feel nice towards them. You wouldn't feel good, appreciative, grateful for your problems. You might understand that these problems are part of your job, but how much do you really understand that? Globally, as a general idea, a problem is something that requires your attention. If there's a problem at work, in your role, that requires your attention. Something is going wrong and it needs you to sort it out. And it is your job to sort things out. That's why you are here. You are here on this planet to sort out problems. And you know what? A lot of those problems are your own. Some of them are not. Some of those problems you will enjoy, such as, I don't know, trying to find a way to improve your squat. And some of them, probably most of your problems, you will not enjoy. Such as dealing with that coworker that just, God, am I right? That coworker? You know the one I'm talking about. We all have them. So problems, you think even you say the word and you shudder, right? I don't want any more problems. But in reality, work, life, they're full of problems, and it's our place to navigate them and deal with them and solve them. However, in relationship to that, I want to discuss just this general idea on how we think about trading our problems for other ones. You may have heard the phrase, the grass is always greener on the other side of the fence. That's the full phrase. It's shortened by moderns as the grass is always greener. But what that idea simply means is that when you're on this side of the fence, and you're looking at the ground and the grass is just not great. You got dandelions growing and you got weeds growing and your dog did something there and you got to shovel that out of the way. And it's just a mess. In other words, you have all of these problems in your own backyard. But then you look up and you look through the fence or over the fence and your neighbor's yard, it just looks so nice. I mean, the grass is just so green. You don't see any dog turds over there. You don't see any patches. It's just nice green grass. And you think, well, damn, the grass over there is so much greener than it is here. And you can spend a considerable amount of time staring across the fence at grass that is not greener. And now there's a couple lessons in that analogy. The first one is that if you were to trespass, if you were to hop the fence and go over to your neighbor's yard If you do this, you should ask permission, by the way. But let's say you do it, you find a way to do it legally. You might actually see, oh, well, there is an issue here. I mean, there is a patch over here. I didn't see this before. There's a patch of grass here that is not so green. There are anthills over here. I didn't notice that. You might actually look over at the fence and look past it and notice that your grass from this position looks greener. The lesson there is that unless you're in the weeds, quite literally in this analogy, unless you're in the weeds of something, you don't see all of the problems, all of the issues, all of the challenges. You may look at someone who is working at a drive-thru, and you may think, man, I'd love to have their simple job. Like, you don't have to think, there's no decision-making stress on you. But then you don't see them having to deal with rude customers. You don't see them having to wear the uniform and not wanting to wear it because maybe it doesn't fit their fashion sense. You don't see them going home and potentially struggling financially because of the minimum wage. You don't see all of the cleaning that they have to do. There's so much you don't see because you haven't done it. And so a lot of times, we look at other people, we look at other situations, and in our heads, because we're not in that situation, we don't know all of the issues and all of the problems. We're not humble enough to realize that there's a lot of that we don't see. It's the tip of the iceberg analogy. Hey there. Let me thank you for being a listener to this ad-free podcast. If you enjoy the podcast, there are a few things you can do to help me out. A 5-star review on Spotify or wherever you're listening to this really does help, and it's free. You can also sign up for my Substack newsletter or Patreon. Substack free gets each episode emailed to you along with the transcripts in the form of an article. You'll also get access to my live talks, followed by a Q&A afterward. Substack Premium supporters and my patrons on Patreon get access to the recordings and a brief article of those Q&A sessions, access to full episodes of the Paradoxically Speaking podcast, my Steps to Success interview series, Stoic meditations, and much more. Links to Substack and Patreon can be found in the show notes. And this can even be a problem if it's something that you've already done before. If you worked as a server when you were in your university years, you may look back at that time with rose-colored glasses. You may think about just the simplicity of the job. You may think about not having to make difficult decisions. You may think about the fun you had with your coworkers. But you forget that you were so stressed out because you couldn't pay your bills on time. You were so stressed out because your boss was just very mean to you. That you had to deal with customers, cranky customers, looking for their coffee right now. And God forbid you serve the coffee too hot or too cold. You forget about all the problems looking back in hindsight. You look at it through rose-colored glasses. And so this idea of looking at something else and just looking at the positive elements of it, it happens from the perspective of someone who doesn't know because they haven't done it, and also someone who has done it, but they're so far removed from it that they can't remember in any nuanced detail the issues, challenges, and yes, the problems of that. So that's lesson number 1 on this the grass is always greener analogy, is that, you know what? Yes, you don't always see the whole iceberg. Sometimes you only see the tip of the iceberg, the top 10%. Now, the second lesson here, one that often gets overlooked in this analogy, is that all of that time you are spending looking across the fence through rose-colored glasses and seeing the grass on the other side and drooling over its greenness, all of that time you spend doing that, you spend not tending your own garden. What if you took that time daydreaming and instead you focused on dealing with the dog's business, trimming the grass, feeding the grass, watering the grass, planting grass seeds? What if, as opposed to looking over at someone else's lawn and being jealous and wishing that you were over there and that you own that property, what if you were to tend to your own property? What if you were to tend to your own grass and make it greener? It's almost like we are looking for ways to trade our problems for other problems that may be the exact same. Sometimes we're looking at someone else's lawn and we wish we had their lawn, but then we forget that if we had that lawn, we'd have the same problems as we have with our current lawn. Yes, weeds grow. Yes, we have to clean up after our dog, etc. So yes, I hate to break it to you, but you need to spend more time tending your own garden. So let's talk about how this manifests itself in our day-to-day lives. Well, how many times have you been frustrated with your job? Maybe not only with your job, maybe you're frustrated with the company you work for, and you're looking at another company, or you're looking at switching careers, or you're looking at getting to be a part of a different division of the company so you can escape these crazy coworkers. That is a grass is always greener situation. You're hoping, you're thinking that if I were to just switch jobs, switch careers, switch companies, switch teams within the company, get different coworkers, if I were to just do that, everything would be all right. But that is not true. And we prove this to ourselves over and over again. Whenever you move to a different lawn, move to a different company, different team, whatever it might be, whenever you change something in your life, yeah, you get rid of your problems, but you gain a whole other host of new problems that you didn't know would come, or you weren't expecting them, or you kind of knew, but you just ignored it conveniently. All that to say, the first line I said, don't trade your problems for different problems. Don't trade your lawn for someone else's. Tend to your lawn. Deal with the problems that you have. Deal with the issues that you have. That's wisdom right there. Now, what that doesn't mean, it doesn't mean that you should never buy a new house. It doesn't mean that you should never switch companies, switch teams. It doesn't mean any of that. Because there are different reasons and life is complicated. And you probably will find yourself switching careers or companies, jobs, whatever it may be. You will find yourself looking for change and getting change throughout your career, throughout your life, for different reasons. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But make sure your reasoning is pure. Make sure you're not being naive. Make sure you're not lying to yourself, telling yourself that once I get to this different job, everything is going to be fine. I'm not going to have any problems. It's going to be great. Because it won't be. Rather, it doesn't have to be. It can be, but it only can be if you go at it with the right perspective. And that perspective is, I am here to do this, whatever it is. And part of this is me dealing with the BS. Part of this is dealing with the problems, sorting out the issues, tending my garden, making my grass as green as I can. And the problems that pop up, the problems that come, they're not something that is a bad thing. These are things that I have to deal with. This is why I'm here. And I'm going to take it another step further. I think, not saying that I'm the best at this, but if I were to think about what the ideal way of looking at your problems would be, it would be that look at them as a good thing. Be grateful for your problems. Problems make you more competent. Problems make you stronger. If you think back on all the problems that you've dealt with and solved throughout your life, can you really say it was a bad thing? Every problem I've ever solved, I've learned from, I've grown from, I've taken something away. I've used it to develop my character. Now, you could use it to develop your character in a poor way. You can complain about every problem you have. You can lose your integrity. But problems are a gift. And if you can be someone that's competent enough to solve problems, like my Lord, talk about a gift. Talk about something to be thankful for. If you're a person in anyone's life, if you're a friend, a worker, anyone, a boyfriend, a husband, a girlfriend, wife, whatever it is, if you're someone who can solve other people's problems because you know what you're doing, because you have competency, and I know you have competency because you're a human being and everybody does in some regard. If you can be that person, man, what a privilege. It's not a bad thing to be someone that can fix problems. It's a good thing. And so why get upset when problems come to you? Like all things external in Stoicism, think of problems as just that. I can use them to develop my character in a positive way, or I cannot. And that's your choice.